Hello, welcome back to Good Day Hobbies. So, I was yet again rummaging through my old Warhammer box when I came across these Wood Elf Warhawk riders. So I thought I'd restore these classic minis and show you what can achieve with these older sculpts. I have two of these Warhawk riders to restore, so let's crack on. First step in any good restoration is stripping off all the old paint, and I do that using acetone. After stripping the paint and old glue with acetone, I drilled and pinned the heavy sections like the wings to the main body, which left some larger than ideal gaps, so I had to crack out the miller putt, filling those gaps until the body and the wings were seamlessly integrated. Here I'm just using the rubber handle of a model file to push the miller putt into those cracks. Then it was just a case of applying a black prime and a zenithal highlight before we can crack on with the painting. I'm going to be switching between both the models, so the models on screen will swap occasionally. Starting the painting off with a nice vibrant base coat of green on the trousers. I'm using Goblin Green by Vallejo, but any bright green would work, just use what you have. Followed by blocking in the browns. Don't worry so much about the exact paints I'm using, and just experiment with the paints that you have. Saying that, if you really want to know the exact paints, ask in the comments and I'll provide a list. The light browns were blocked in next using ochre, then highlighted with a bone colour. Followed by applying a base coat to the skin. After that base coat dried, I applied a red wash to add depth to the recesses, before doing the classic two-step highlighting with the original skin colour, then just mixing in some white to brighten that up to the final highlight. I added some highlights on the green sections, focusing on the raised areas using a mixture of volumetric highlighting and edge highlighting. For the hair, I base coated with a dark red contrast paint, followed by using Wild Rider Red to highlight the individual strands. To highlight the dark brown sections, I used that same ochre colour as the base coat for the lighter wood. Then it was onto the metallics. For this, I'm using Steel by Darkstar for the silver parts, which were then highlighted up with the brightest silver I had. Then for the gold, I'm actually using a copper metallic, followed by a highlight of that same bright silver, making sure to pick out all the leaves that are on each bit of the equipment, and then with those metallics done, the riders are complete. Now it's onto the Warhawks. The base coats for these are pretty simple, black and dark brown contrast paints for the wings and the body, followed by an orange-brown dry brush. I did this over both the brown and the black bits to add some tonal difference into the black wings, before doing a grey dry brush over the top of that. For the white sections, I gave them a coat of Nuln Oil before taking a very fine brush and painting in the individual feather strands with a pure titanium white, which I did the same thing on the browns using that original orange brown colour, which I then followed up with a further highlight of a nice light tan. This really gave each feather a nice shift and a lot of texture. If you're enjoying the video and want to see me paint up more wood elves, then let me know down in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. Once the feathers were complete, it was onto the leaves on the back, and they just got the same treatment as the ones for the riders, so a nice coat of vibrant green followed by a teal highlight. Unfortunately, the SD card had an error, so I lost all the yellow painting sections, but this is really simple. It's just a ochre base coat followed by an orange shade wash and then highlighted up with the brightest yellow I had. And with that, the Warhawks are painted. Now it's just time to glue the riders to their mounts and onto the basing. For the basing, I had the idea to have them somehow jumping from a tree like they had just taken off, so after getting some 3D printed parts, I started shaping the woodland. Using one main trunk, I used a variety of parts that looked like they would have fitted together, particularly focusing around this other hollow trunk that looks like it would fit directly onto this branch, positioning it in such a way where it looks like that branch had snapped off and is now on the floor. Then for the other base, I took inspiration from mangrove roots and tried to place as many kind of twisted roots coming up from the texture paste as possible. I then had a bunch of 3D printed plants and ferns and flowers to act as the foliage for the forest floor. Once all these sections were glued in place, it was time to paint the basing. To make this fast, I just whipped out the airbrush and got some nice vivid greens and teal colours onto these leaves quickly. I wasn't really worried about getting the overspray anywhere, as I just wanted to get the base shades down. I started by applying quite a bright teal jade colour to the leaves and then proceeded to add a very vibrant green and almost yellow in some places as the final highlight. That teal base really adds a nice blue undertone to all the vivid green leaves. Then I got out a big brush and just painted all the wooden sections brown, using a mixture of tones where some are almost black, some are light, and some are quite bright ochre colours. I used the same brown tones on the forest floor to add a lot of variation within the mud. Following that, I used the Dirty Down Moss Effect paint to basically cover most of the floor with a layer of moss. Applying this very liberally, basically around the base of every log and every root that is visible. Additionally, just kind of under some leaves and some of the ferns, pretty much giving it a carpet of moss. Then I decided to try the Verdigris effect paint just to see if it would look nice, and I'm pleased to say it worked really well. Looking like small patches of lichen, breaking up the green moss nicely and really adding some variation to the forest floor. I also used some of the AK still water to add these kind of puddle effects that you can see on the base there. I think it adds another layer to the forest floor effect. Finally, to finish up the basing, I took that original jade teal colour and used it to add texture back onto the leaves, painting small lines onto each leaf. I also did this with a bright green and some yellow tones as well. Lastly, for the bromeliad style plants, I used a pink fluorescent paint to add a very bright pop of colour into each base. And with that, the basing was finished and it's on to the grand reveal. These guys turned out really nice and definitely have that pop on the tabletop. The basing was definitely the thing that brings these guys to life. What other Wood Elf units should I paint, as these guys have really made me want to get some more? And if you made it this far, thanks for watching and I'll catch you next time.